Hey everyone. So everyone in the world knows by now that Melania Trump lifted passages from Michelle Obama's 2008 speech and used them as her own in her speech to the Republican convention 2 nights ago. And no, the fate of the Republic does not hang on whether Melania committed plagiarism, nor will the fate of the election depend on that. But sometimes from relatively trivial situations like this, we can learn very profound things about people. And so it is in this case. What is important to me about Melania's plagiarism isn't what she did, it's how the Trump campaign responded after Melania's speech. I think that this incident speaks volumes about both the incompetence and the corruption of the Trump campaign, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that today. First of all, the incompetence part. Here's my thought. It should have taken, I would say, about 50 seconds for the Trump campaign to find out definitively what happened. Had I been Donald Trump, I would have pulled my wife aside and said, "Look, honey, what happened with your speech? It was almost identical in parts to a Michelle Obama speech. What happened?" And at that point, Melania would have told him, "Well, Donald, that first speechwriter you hired, Matthew Scully, wrote a speech for me. I didn't like it. It didn't work for me. It didn't sound like words I would say. I rejected that speechwriter and got my own speechwriter, Meredith MacIver. And in my discussions with MacIver, I told her that I liked an old Michelle Obama speech and actually gave her passages from that 2008 speech. And I guess she didn't make enough changes to the passages that I read to her over the phone because, well, I guess, Donald, they're pretty similar to the original speech that Michelle Obama gave." He would have found that out in about 1 minute. I mean, why did there need to be any confusion at all? A 5-minute conversation with Melania would have cleared that up. But that leads to the sort of more important things that we learned about the Trump campaign. The Trump response to Melania's plagiarism underscores really what we already knew about the campaign. Number one, never admit that you've made a mistake. So the first response of the campaign was to deny that there was any problem whatsoever. We saw the insufferable Paul Manafort, the campaign manager, going on numerous TV shows telling us that there really was no plagiarism, that this was just an unfortunate coincidence that the two speeches sounded similar. Manafort portrayed it as a kind of mystical mind meld between Michelle Obama and Melania Trump, where the two women were thinking in such similar ways and such similar values that they simply came out with the same speech. Just one of those remarkable coincidences. That was until Professor Rutledge of McGill University, an astrophysicist, sat down and computed the likelihood that the two women would actually use not only the same phrases, but the same phrases in exactly the same order. He calculated that possibility to be 1 in 87 billion. That's right, 1 in 87 billion. So, no, not so much for that explanation. So if you can't deny that there was any mistake or any problem, admit that there's a problem, but just blame it on your political opponent. Various operatives from the Trump campaign said it was Hillary's fault, that Hillary was the first person to complain about Melania's speech. Not true. Hillary hasn't said a word about it. So the Trump campaign portrayed it as a brouhaha created by the Democrats. This was simply the Democrats ganging up on and beating up on poor Melania Trump. Well, unfortunately, that explanation didn't work very well either. Now, of course, the simplest thing for the Trump campaign to have done would have been to say, "Hey, we made a mistake. This is really unfortunate. Those passages really were lifted from Michelle Obama. We apologize. Here's our explanation for it. And, this was the candidate's wife. We didn't supervise the speech carefully enough. That was our fault. Now let's move on." But that is so foreign to the Trump campaign to acknowledge a mistake, to apologize for something, and to simply take ownership of the fact that you screwed up, that for 24 hours they were incapable of doing that. Let's remember that this is the same Donald Trump that claimed, "I saw thousands and thousands of Muslims celebrating in Jersey City right after 9/11. Well, we now know that that event never took place. But that doesn't stop Donald Trump from still claiming that he saw this celebration. This is the same Donald Trump that years ago told us that he had sent his crack investigative team to Hawaii, and they had found out some pretty shocking things about Barack Obama and where he was born. Well, Barack Obama's birth certificate has completely trashed that notion, but it doesn't stop Donald Trump from still muttering vague conspiratorial notions. The MO of the Trump campaign is, when caught in a lie, say the lie again louder. And if your adversaries persist, just keep on lying. Never admit you've made a mistake. If you claim that Trump's steaks were a success, and everybody knows that Trump steaks died years ago when nobody bought them and nobody liked them, doesn't matter. Keep claiming that they were a success and give a press conference where you've got steaks piled up on a table in front of you. Even if they're not really Trump steaks, somebody will believe they are. Now, I have a couple more thoughts about this. First of all, I have a question. How has Donald Trump ever made any money? I mean, his campaign is such a model of incompetence. Even when Hillary Clinton has vulnerable moments, and she's had more than her share in this campaign, Trump can't capitalize on any of them because he's so busy stepping on his own toes. Whether it's tweeting things from white supremacist websites, whether it's his inability to make up his mind over who he's chosen as his vice presidential nominee, he's constantly bungling situations that he should be taking advantage of. And I admit, he has been successful. His MO is, if you can convince people that you're a success, you can con people into believing you and following you, however foolish you are. Two more things about Melania. It would seem that one of the other fraudulent branding claims by Donald Trump is that his wife has a degree in architecture. Back in Slovenia, various journalists looked into this, and what they found was she went to university for 1 year and then dropped out. In the Trump mythology, this is morphed into Melania Trump has a full degree in architecture. They can't even tell the truth about that. Finally, about Melania, it may be that Meredith McIver is telling the truth, that when these passages were read to her over the phone, she didn't realize that they were verbatim excerpts from an old Michelle Obama speech. Of course, she should have realized that, but let's say for the sake of discussion that she didn't realize it, hence didn't realize how much plagiarism she was committing when she sent back a draft to Melania. Well, the one person who should have known that it was plagiarism was Melania, because Melania knew exactly what the original was and exactly what she got back. It's only because we're setting the bar so low for her that we believe that she's sort of too naive and too muddle-headed to realize that this was plagiarism. In fact, I think both McIver and Melania were motivated by the idea that nobody will notice, and even if they do notice, they won't realize what we've done is improper. Bad calculation. So my parting thought is, I think this has told us a lot more about Donald than it's told us about Melania. And I have to believe that at some point, the laws of karma will kick in. And the American people will realize that someone who conducts himself this way shouldn't be allowed anywhere near the White House. I'm Jeff Rowan. Thanks for watching.